And I would like to avenge the only defeat I ever had against you-know-who. I'm not going to give him no publicity.
Still, the rematch with Ali was not given. George's love for the sport of boxing had begun to wane. He would lose a close decision to Jimmy Young.
And Jimmy Young, who said he had a religious experience after the loss to Young. Others called it
there's
heat
too much
frustration
ups and
in Puerto
downs
Rico in
here. My
1977.
And then he would retire, unceremoniously.
When everybody, oh, that's okay, man. You know, you'll come back. It was just a fight. But then all of a sudden, things started happening in that room.
He was rushed to the hospital, and the press was told that Foreman had become overcome by the heat. But George felt he had suffered more than a momentary blackout.
The feared brute, known as Big George Foreman, disappeared from the public consciousness.
I get so much goosebumps.
During a 10-year break from boxing, George Foreman contemplated what Ali had taken from him.
One of the beautiful things that he did is he acknowledged the ability of Muhammad Ali and acknowledged that loss and put a shrine up in his home.
This is the proof that I was in the fight with him. Punched me around the eye.
I started to not only be happy about my life, but be happy about the life I lived before and put them together and become an evangelist.
14 years ago, Foreman retired from boxing to preach the word of God.
The little fame and fortune we get is not going to follow us in the grave, brother, sister.
He would find his peace in his faith, serving as a minister for the next 10 years.
During that 10-year absence, at any time, did you have the desire to come back?
10 years, I didn't even shadow box.
He became a terrific father.
You've got 5 sons, 5 daughters. I know you're very proud of all of them.
They're all named George.
I named all my sons George Edward Foreman.
No
In 1984, he had started the George Foreman Youth and Community Center.
He opened his own youth center, emptying his entire savings to do so.
Giving money for scholarships for kids to go to school. I had to keep that up.
He would hold fundraisers to keep the center going, but as his money ran out, George was in
I'm getting
danger of
emotional.
losing it all.
The youth center started to take every dime I could get.
It started costing everything to get a foundation, lawyer fees, building. I wanted to go out and do myself, and I ran out of money, and that's the reason I even got myself back into boxing.
13 years after losing his title, George Foreman began the seemingly impossible task of regaining it.
I said, I got to go back into boxing. I asked my wife, I said, what do you think? She said, they're going to kill you. Don't do it.
You're 300 pounds, you're too old, you'll never be champ of the world, because they thought I wanted it overnight. But I looked in the mirror and said, they're telling the truth. I'm pretty old here.
Tomorrow night, veteran boxer George Foreman will put on the gloves and climb back into the ring after almost a decade in retirement.
But I'm going to start from the bottom. I know how to promote. I know how to recreate. I know how to get myself back in shape.
Just as unceremoniously as he had retired, he returned, fighting no-name opponents and journeymen.
So I came back. I got a scale. I was 315 pounds.
Strong mentality.
That's a knockdown because no, it isn't. It should have been. You went against the rope. I think how we want to.
And then when people started to take him seriously because they were tantalized by a charming, fat old heavyweight, I just swooned at their gullibility.
George was viewed as a joke, held up as an example of the decline of the sport of boxing. Cash grabbing on his past accomplishments.
Well, George Foreman wins on a TKO. It is his 8th straight wins.
An aging, overweight has-been.
They laughed at me. And people wrote me from all over the world, George, don't do it.
Trying to recapture that glory.
But the one thing they all had in common who would write me, there wasn't a dime in the mail.
Carefully and quietly, he rounded himself back into boxing form.
They laughed at me and I fought one fight after another. One after another. They laughed. The more I win, the more they would joke. George Foreman's not
so
fighting
much
anyone.
love for this guy.
That is George Foreman, the 39-year-old ex-champ.
As his competition rose, opponents were dead set on proving the old man was finished.
Yeah, he still has that unbelievable punching power. Even though he's got a belly and he looks like he's shambling around in his pajamas, he's still got something.
But here he is 3 years later, so I have to salute him. Salute him for pulling off one of the great scams in boxing history, which, trust me, is saying a lot.
What he once was, he's showing it now.
And he is badly hurt.
George Foreman.
Oh, and that's it. And I don't think, hey, this fight's over. This fight's over.
Jeez.
George Foreman blows away.
This guy's done.
Unlike in his first go-around, George was now a fan favorite. His lovable charisma and willingness to poke fun at himself
all that about
endeared
him.
him
Now
to the
you're
masses.
gonna come
In boxing, no one is bigger, more admired, or more in demand.
By George, I think he's got
George had become the undisputed king
the
of
money,
the big
George.
South.
Because George is very popular, and he deserves the popularity that he's gotten because he's a natural. There's nothing phony about him.
Appearing on magazines, commercials, his own sitcom.
But you look good. You look
did
great.
that.
You only saying that because it's true.
Foreman the boxer was famous, but Foreman the salesman was a phenom.
George
It's easier.
I was a salesman. I'd learned to be a salesman. I had 10 years out of boxing to be an evangelist, and I'd understood if you don't really make some noise and make people pay some attention, no one is going to stop and listen to you.
At the peak of his fame, he became the spokesperson for a household grilling product, the George Foreman Grill, earning Foreman nearly $5 million a month from sales.
And then all of a sudden the checks just started rolling in. This thing sold over
First time I heard it was in The Office.
100
He burned
million.
himself for nothing.
Right, and to give the check some context too, you end up being bought out, I think, for something like $140 million after what you had already made.
This is my George Foreman family-sized grill that
No, it isn't. It's my George Foreman griddle that cooks pancakes.
Everybody likes a jolly fat man.
Well, one thing people love about him, you saw right there, the highest knockout percentage in the history of all heavyweight champions. Part of George Foreman's odyssey in this comeback, up and down the scale. Thus seems like yesterday's weigh-in.
How old is he?
Yes, his first return fight, he weighed 267. Here he is 3 years later, 263. You've heard of the diet formula, what is it, Slim Fast? I think George has developed Slim Slow. It doesn't appear like George is hitting hard, but once he hits the guy, he totally paralyzes his opponents.
That's all you need in that sport.
Boom, perfect timing.
Wee.
Rodriguez goes down. Case in point.
I'm getting dizzy this group right now.
Foreman, who demolished Joe Frazier to capture the world crown 17 years ago, is making a remarkable comeback. Now shaven-headed, he's recorded 22 victories on his way to another shot at the world title.
No way.
And
No.
it wasn't long before a
Take it
super fight
easy.
against heavyweight champ Evander Holyfield was in high demand.
Is he back? He's gonna fight more. Oh my god. Thought he
In
was
what
gonna
would
stop.
be, at that time, the biggest payday in heavyweight history.
George said, I
Oh,
may
that's
be
good
old,
then, though.
I may be fat.
I see
But he
what
said,
you're doing,
here
George.
I
see
is.
what you're doing.
Mark, with a 28-year-old
understand.
Evander Holyfield, undisputed heavyweight
I'll
champion,
be the same.
and for the first defense, he's fighting a 42-year-old George Foreman.
The pundits were convinced the fight was more farce than anything.
A lot of people made a big deal about this as being a farce beforehand. You think that George, even though you say Holyfield is going to win, you think Foreman has a chance to win this
But
fight?
it took only a few rounds before no one was laughing.
It's thought, Nigel, that if it goes
So
past
he's
4
protecting
rounds,
himself right after the
Foreman could be in some trouble. Because, of course, the whole game plan for Evander Holyfield is to wear George Foreman down.
A drama entitled The Old Guy Hung in There. Took a beating but went the distance, kept coming and trying.
Holyfield blasted Foreman, connecting clean, but Foreman kept coming.
Combination, staggered.
seemingly impervious to pain.
George seems to have absorbed those punches in the previous round rather well, Dick.
He did. Surprisingly well.
Foreman aimed Vander's best shots and pushed forward, and though he was slow and plodding, his power could turn any fight with a single punch.
Well, here he comes. George is to Holyfield.
The first round I gave to George because I think he legitimately hurt Evander the last 30 seconds.
Round 6 scheduled for 12 for the undisputed heavyweight title.
Any who thought the bout was just for spectacle had been silenced.
Those are the punches that are put down all the heavyweights that Evander Holyfield has faced so far.
Here comes Holyfield, doubling his left and his right.
How is this gonna end? Oh, he's tired.
Scoring heavily.
Flush and George
Protecting himself, so pretty good, no?
George Foreman just took some tremendous shots.
What's your response? What's your response? What's your response?
For the winner by unanimous decision, and still undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, the real deal, Evander
Foreman, it's trite to say, but Foreman was a winner in many respects here tonight as well.
Ultimately, Foreman was beaten on points, but the way he fought proved that the second coming of Big George Foreman was no mirage.
Like the eighth wonder of the world. Never will you ever see this again.
George,
it'll take 50 years before another generation sees something like this. We're a man closer to 50, 60 than he is to 20 and 19. Show the whole world by going toe-to-toe, and the young man is holding on for his breath. And we keep going. Boy, I tell you, what is happening to the world? All senior citizens around the world can be proud of themselves. Hip, hip, hooray!
Like a lot of fans, I started to think to myself, George, you've thrilled us, you've been great, you've inspired us, you've entertained us. But now, please, isn't it time to go back to the old fishing hole before you seriously get hurt?
A few days after Michael Moore beat Evander Holyfield, I got a call from George. And I said, George, you can't kid me. You want to fight Michael Moore. And he said more than anything else in the world.
When Michael Moore defeated Holyfield to become the new champion, George Foreman, at age 45, would get one final shot.
I knew what Teddy told me, like, he's a big con. And I just look at him like, go get me a sandwich and sit down. And you're so fake.
Featuring the clown king of the sport, the larger-than-life George Foreman.
I know
well, there are a lot of skeptics out there who think that George now is more King Khan than King Kong. But George hasn't earned this championship shot as a fighter. He hasn't fought in a year and a half, and on that inauspicious occasion, he lost to Tommy Morrison.
With the fighter he's fighting, he's going to have to punch and try to club him and just keep beating him. But I don't think that's going to happen.
So you see no chance that George can win the fight?
Very little.
Very little.
Foreman looked to become the oldest heavyweight champion in boxing history. But despite the optimism of the crowd, few gave Foreman more than a puncher's chance.
Middle-aged men don't knock out 25-year-old heavyweight champions.
He would be the oldest to win the heavyweight title by a huge margin over Walker, who was 37 when he beat Ezzard Charles.
I always thought if the George Foreman from the Rumble in the Jungle had the brain of the George Foreman who fought Michael Moore, that's the greatest fighter ever.
Let's get ready to rumble! I'm the boss man in here. Take hands to lunch.
George, how are you going to find him? You haven't fought in a long time. He moves in there. He goes at a different angle. He's a southpaw. He wouldn't stand still for Holyfield. Why would he stand still for you? And George said, you watch, somewhere late in the fight, he's going to come stand in front of
And
you.
in the press, the feeling was that Michael would be too sharp, too fast, too young. Big George, too slow and too big and too old. This colossus of heavyweight boxing. A man with a foot in several decades. If people over the last 2 or 3 months think this fight shouldn't take place, I think that George is putting himself in danger of real and serious injury.
The shadow of Ali loomed large over the career and legacy of Foreman.
The vibrations are against him, the planets are against him, and already he done lost the first 5 rounds.
Michael Moore will go back to Teddy Atlas. Big George will lumber back slightly slower.
The hardest part of the fight is over. Now you know it's not make-believe anymore.
Teddy Atlas telling him
our sparring partners were better.
The hardest part of the fight is over. You know what he's made of. Our sparring partners were better. We're round 8. Foreman's trailing, losing, but not out of the fight.
Get all you got, George.
That's a fantastic short left cross from Moore, wrong-footed and sent Foreman stumbling.
George Foreman had never openly sought specific redemption for his demise against Ali and Zaire, but it's revealing that he chose to wear the same trunks on this night that he had worn in the jungle 20 years before.
George Foreman in the shorts he wore that night in Zaire to rumble in the jungle when he lost his world heavyweight title.
I told you, I'm the champion of the world.
But he always saw the ghost of Muhammad Ali. And
Everybody has felt all along that you're always chasing the ghost of Ali. Does this make you catch that ghost?
I'm the greatest. You don't have any business in the ring with me.
That's it! It's a short right hand!
No way! Oh my god! No way!
It happened! It happened!
No way!
I can't believe
No
it.
way! He did it!
I can't believe
Chasing the ghost of Ali. Does this make you catch that ghost?
Yeah, I've exercised the ghost once and forever.
Sure. 20 years after being beaten by Ali,
Please let
George
this be his
Foreman recaptured the heavyweight championship, the oldest
this is
champion in the
beautiful.
history of boxing.
Wow. Wow.
I'm not the greatest, but I'm the hungriest. And those guys are
Facts.
younger, stronger,
100%.
faster, more sophisticated. But the one thing
That's
they
right.
lacked, and I had, was good old hunger.
Yes.
Nobody brings it home like
The mind. Wow. Wow. Wow, you guys. Wow. This is insane. Thank you for requesting this one. Insane. Shout out to George Foreman. This was so beautiful. What an ending. It could not have ended any better. And I checked a new interview now when he's older and he just seems so humble and happy, and it's just wow. Well, I don't know what to say. I'm just super happy that I watched this one at 3 in the morning, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like and comment other videos you want me to react down below. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys in the next video. Stay healthy, stay safe, bye.